Alright, today we're going to continue on from ratios. Ratios we can write as a fraction, correct? Okay, and it's typically how we're going to use them. Okay, we know we can interchange between all three methods, so in case they give us something with the word 2 or a colon, we know we can automatically write it as a fraction. Now, from a fraction, we're going to go to decimals and percents. Okay, and some of this is review, okay, some of it may not be. So, we're going to learn today, if I can get my marker to right, okay, we're going to talk about interchanging between fractions, decimals, and percents. Okay, the first one we're going to talk about is going from a fraction to a decimal. Sorry, that looks like a line through that C. I'm going to clear that up. It looks like an E. Okay. Now, to change a fraction to a decimal, let's say we have 1/2. Okay? You basically have to divide. Okay? Now, there's some of them you're going to have to learn. Okay? And this is going to be common sense that you'll use more than others. Okay? And we'll talk about them. Half is one of them. But I am going to allow you to use calculators on this section, because if not, you're going to have to divide all the way. Okay? Which means you're going to have to go over here and go 2 divided into 1. You have to add your decimals. Okay? And then you would end up having to figure it out. Okay? Which is not a problem. But you need to know how to do that in case you do not have a calculator. Okay? Now, some of you in a calculator even plug it in incorrectly. Okay? When you plug this in, the top number goes in first, then you hit the divide key, and then you hit the bottom number. Some people want to do this and say 2 divided into 1. Well, your calculator's not reading it this way. Okay? When you plug in the top number, it knows it's going to plug it in underneath the division sign. Yes. So on your calculator, you're going to go 1 divided by 2. Okay? All right? If I said 3 divided by 5, on your calculator, you would just hit 3 divided by 5. Emily, if you don't care, can you open that cabinet, the glass door over there to your... I want to pause this for a minute. Okay, what'd you get, Chloe? 0.6. Okay? Now, if I went over here to divide, that would have been 5 into 3. I have to add a decimal 0, so that would have still been 6, because 5 times 6 is 30, okay? So I'm just kind of speeding your process up a little bit using those calculators right now, okay? What about if I had 12 over 25? So on your calculator, you're going to hit 12 divided by 25. Katie? 0.48. Okay? Anybody have a problem using a calculator, okay, to go from a fraction to a decimal? It just does. It's like a computer. It's a small computer in your hand. Okay? Do you want to? Am I pausing it? Yes, I did. Yeah. My counter's going over here. Okay? Alright. The second thing we're going to do is go from a decimal to a fraction. Okay? If you have a decimal, you have 0.5. Okay? If you know your place values, okay, your place value here is a tenth. Okay? So that means I'm going to put 5 over 10. And then I would need to reduce it. Yes. If I know what place value it is. Now, if I don't remember that that was the 10th place, that was the name of that spot, I have 1 space after the decimal that's being used, so I'm going to have 1 0. Okay? Yes. I would be copying it down because you're going to get some worksheets here in a minute and you're going to be converting all three. So you may need to be looking at examples to see. So yes, I would. Now, then I need to reduce that. That would reduce by 5, so that's going to be 1/2. Okay? I'm going to scroll up a little bit. Let's say I have something like 0.32. Well, again, if you know your place values, remember the first one was a 10th place. The second is the 100th place. So that means I'm going to be 32 over 100. Okay? Again, if you did not know the place value name, okay, how many places after the decimal did I use? 2. So how many zeros am I going to use? 2 zeros. Okay? Now I would reduce, this one I'm going to reduce by 4. And that's going to be 8 over 25. Because I always want your fraction in simplified form. The reduced version. Okay? So this may be where some of you still struggle a little bit in the reducing of fractions. Okay? Let's look at another one. Let's say I have something like 0.125. Well, what place value is that? If this was 10th and that was 100th, what do you think this one's going to be? 1,000. So I'm going to put 125 over 1,000. Now, if you did not remember the name, how many places after the decimal did I have? So how many zeros am I going to have? 3. Okay? Now, sometimes we get something with a whole number out here. Okay? There's 2 ways you can do this. Okay? So we're going to show both ways. 2 is a whole number. So if I'm making a fraction, 2 can stay my whole number, and then I've got my fraction piece. Okay? So forget the 2, kind of cover it up for a minute, and how would I write 4/10 as a fraction? 4 over 10, and then I would need to reduce, right? Okay? Does everybody see that? Now, if you do the other way, and you say, okay, I forgot that that's a whole number, that's okay. I can make this look like 24, but do not put it over 100. 4 is your last place after the decimal, right? And that's still in what place? 10th. So you still have to put it over 10, which makes this look like improper, and we'll talk about improper fractions in a minute. But when you get done, you're still going to come out with this before you reduce. Okay? Did everybody see that? Okay? Yes, sir. Yes, but you don't, you don't ever leave a fraction over a fraction. Two-fifths divided by 2/5? Well, but $2.50 is not a fraction. I can make it into a fraction of 5/2. Okay? So I think you're kind of skipping way ahead somewhere. Okay? All right. Anybody have a question on how to change a decimal to a fraction? You always need to reduce. Okay? Now, let's talk about changing a decimal to a percent. Okay? Let's say I have 0.25. And I ask you to write that as a percent. Okay? Very simple. Decimal to a percent, you're going to move the decimal 2 places, and it's always 2 places. Okay? to the right. Okay? So if I have 0.25, sometimes you'll have a 0 out here, that's okay. 0.25, to change it from a decimal to a percent, I'm going to take this decimal and move it 2 places to the right. It's going to stop right here, so that looks like 25%. That's all you do. Just move the decimal. Now, I'm going to do some of those, okay? So did everybody see that? Let's do another one that only has 2. 30.36. I'm going to move it 2 places. So that's going to equal 36%. Okay? Let's say I have something like 0.125. I'm still only going to move it 2 places. So when I move it 2 places, he's going to get hung between the 2 and the 5, right? So now it looks like I have 12.5%. That's it. That's all you do. Decimal to percent, 2 places to the right, that's it. Now, even if I have a whole number out here, let's say I have 4.7253. Doesn't matter. How many places are you going to move your decimal? 2. So 1, 2. He gets hung between the 2 and 5. So it looks like I have 472.53%. What 0? Up here? No, because the 0 out front doesn't mean anything. Okay. So that one doesn't mean anything there. What, right here? Right there? No, it's just not correct. It's like making your letter B backwards. Okay, I mean, okay. All right, what if I have 0.2? How do you change a decimal to a percent? I have to add a 0 because it still has to move 2 places. So for me to move it 2 places, I have to add a 0. Yes. Okay. Anybody have a question on that? That's why also you have notes. Okay. All right. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change a percent to a decimal. Okay. So if I give you 35%, it's just the opposite. You're going to move the decimal 2 places, and again, it's 2 places to the left. So right now, when I have 35%, there's a decimal hidden on there. Where is it? Behind the 5. So he's hidden right here. We just don't write it. Okay? So I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. So 1, 2. So my answer would be 0.35. Now this 0 doesn't have to be there, but it's helpful so you don't lose sight of the decimal. Okay? So some people, when they write 0.35, they may end up writing it somewhere on their paper, and that decimal would get lost on the line, either your margin line or your line that we write on. Okay, sometimes it'll get lost. So if you put that 0 in front, it's a little bit more recognizable that there's something there. Okay? What if I have 3%? I'm still going to move the decimal what? 2 places. He's hidden right there. So 1. So how am I going to force him to move 2? I've got to add a 0. So this one looks like 0.03.
So the main thing with math is
Okay.
the ones for 0 math would be.
You got to start somewhere, don't you? What if I have 232%. I'm still going to move my decimal. How many? 2. So what's my answer going to be? 1.32. Okay. What if I have a decimal in here? What if I have 13.25%? I still move it 2 places. So what am I going to end up with? Very good. And I put a 0 out here just not to lose that decimal. Okay. Anybody have a question? Probably the hardest thing that you've learned so far is changing from a decimal to a fraction because you have to reduce. There's more steps. Okay? All right. Percent to fraction. Percent is always over 100. So whatever percent I have, if I have 25%, to change it to a fraction, I'm just going to put my number over 100. And then I reduce, which in this case then is 1/4. Okay? Even a percent to a fraction is not hard, because you're automatically going to put it over 100 and then start and reduce. It becomes harder because you have to reduce. That's where it becomes harder. Not by writing it, it's the reducing part. What if I have 3%? It's going to be 3 over what? 3 over 100. And then I would see if that would reduce. That one will not. Okay? What if we have something like 225%? 225 is still over what? 100. Now that's improper and we got to change it. Okay? But that's all you're going to do. Yeah, and we're going to talk about that one in a minute, so we'll come back to that one.
Would there be any question that somebody did
Well, possibly, but not when we're talking about changing. Yes, sir. Okay. Now, fraction to percent. I'm going to tell you the easiest way for you to do it. Okay? Yeah, I like you that much. Okay? There's different tricks, and some of you will be ready to learn that trick, and I'll show you one, okay, with the trick. But just to keep on the same thing over and over and over and over, change your fraction to a decimal. I did that again. It looks like an E. And then from a decimal, you're going to change it to the percent. So you're going to use your calculator, divide it, write the decimal, then you're going to move the decimal 2 places and you have your percent. Okay? So if I give you 3 over, 7. Okay? On your calculator, you're going to hit 3 divided by 7 and tell me what you get. Let's get one out of here. What'd you get? What'd you get, Chloe? Okay, 1428. Hold on, we'll check it, but keep going. 14285. 42. Okay, everybody check that again just to make sure whether you think you're right or not. 3 divided by 7. Were you right? Yeah, it's going to be 0.4 something. Is that 1 there? Chloe, come let me look. Make sure your calculator's not on something different. So she does has a 1 on hers. Hers doesn't have, oh, there's no 1. Oh, okay, but I thought you said 0.1428. Okay. All right, so I apologize. Yeah, I thought she said 0.14, and she said 0.42. So, is that what everybody got now? Okay. And there was another letter. There was another number over here, and that was an 8. Okay. Now, if you see this on your calculator, I don't want you to have to write all that. Okay? Write the first 3 places and stop. Okay? Well, that's okay. I'm telling you now. Go 3 places. So on your paper, you're going to write 0.428. Now, is that going to be an 8 or is it going to stay a 9? It's going to go up to a 9 because of the 5, right? It's going to round it up. Now, how do I change this decimal to a percent? Move it 2 places. So 1, 2, and I get 42.9%. Okay, that's the easiest way to do a fraction to a percent. Now, yes, to the right. Decimal to percent is right. Percent to decimal is left. Okay? From decimal to percent, you're moving to the right. Okay? From percent to decimal, you move to the left. Okay? Now I'm going to show you one. Okay? What did I say about percent is always over what? 100. Now, if I wanted to change this fraction to a percent, if I could force that bottom number to become 100 by doing something mathematically to it, by multiplying something, I can also do the top, and I can go straight from fraction to percent that way. But not always. The 3/7 wouldn't have worked as nice. 4/10 will work that nice. What am I going to multiply by 10 to get to 100? 10. Well, I'm going to multiply the top by 10. So 4 times 10 is, and we said percent is always over 100, right? So that is 40%. Okay, that is strictly straight fraction to percent. I could cut off the decimal part. Okay? But do the decimal part. Everybody punch in your calculator, 4 divided by 10. Tell me what you get. 0.4. And then I'm going to change 0.4 to a percent, and I'm going to move the decimal how many places? 2. 1. For me to move it 2, I've got to add a 0. So it's 40%. Okay? Now, some of you will be able to get this and understand it and be able to apply it. But if you're not there yet, it's okay. Decimal, from decimal to percent. We still get the same answer. Okay? Anyone have a question? Okay. Now, we're going to change improper to mixed. Okay? So what improper means is the top number is larger than the bottom. Okay? Now, so what you have to think of is, how many times will 2 go into 5? 2 times. And 2 times 2 is? So how much would you have left over? 1. Now, if you divide, this top number is your whole number. This remainder part is your numerator. And then the bottom right here is your denominator. So when you write it, 2 was your whole, numerator over denominator. Now, some of you need visuals. I could care less if you draw visuals on your paper. You go to a baker, okay? And that baker, okay, let's say we have 5 pieces of pie that he has left at the end of the day. And he wants to see how many whole pies he has left and parts, okay? He cuts all of his pies in half. So when you go to his restaurant, he gives you half a pie, okay? A big piece of pie, but anyway, half pie. So if he has 5 pieces, if you think about that baker, these are empty tins. Once he's cut them, he's put the pieces out there, okay? So he's going to put 5 of those back in here. So when he fills them back into some pie tin, and he has 5 pieces, how many whole pies does he have? 2, and he has 1/2 of the other 10, correct? So if you need visuals, I could care less. If you want to do visuals, that's fine. Hopefully, you'll get to a point that you don't have to use those. Hopefully, you don't need them now. But if you do, you can have those. What? No, because I only have 5 pieces of pie. Okay. So let's look at another one for improper to mixed. Let's say I have 32. We're going to go a little harder. 32 over 25. So you have to think. If I have 32 people and I pull 25 of them away, how many groups of 25 could I have? 1. And how many would be left over waiting for the next group? 7. How did you get 7, Paul? You're right. What'd you do? Okay, so if he divides, he's going to take 25 into 32. And he said, okay, that was 1. So what's 1 times 25? So what am I doing here to figure out my remainder? You're subtracting the 2. Okay, you're going to subtract those 2. Let's say something can go twice. Let's make up a number, and let's say we have 2 times or more. Let's do that. 128 divided by 30. Okay. How many groups of 30 can I make out of 128? 4. Okay. What is 4 times 30? So if I'm dividing, it's what? Okay. And if I have 128, how many people would be left over? So that's going to be 8 over 30. And then what do I need to do to that fraction? Simplify it or reduce it. Okay? Anybody have a question with that? Yes. Because 30 is telling me how many people's in each group. If Mr. Breeding calls over the announcement and says, I need everybody to come outside in groups of 5. Okay? What we're going to do is cluster together in groups of 5. Well, we may only have 2 people left over. That 5 on the bottom is telling me how many people I need to make a complete group. So this 30 is telling me that's how many's in my group. Okay? Now, once I reduce, it may go down. But right now, the original, I need 30 in a group before I can do anything with them. Yes, yes. You would need to reduce. So at this point, 2 goes into both, so I would put 4 over 15. So yeah, you always reduce. Okay? Alright, and the last thing is we're going from mixed to improper. Okay? Now, if I have 2 and 2/3, and I need to, here's my thing. When we deal with mixed numbers, we're going to learn to add and subtract mixed numbers. But when you go beyond this, you're never going to use a mixed number. You're going to always have to use an improper fraction. So really, mixed numbers means nothing to you after you get rid of 7th grade. So when you're in high school and college, you deal nothing with mixed numbers. If you get a mixed number, your first thing is to change it to improper because you can't deal with it mathematically. Because the level of math you're doing, you have to have it as improper to start and work with it. So there's really no point, okay, of a mixed number after you get to the high school level because everything is workable as improper. It's kind of like our ratios right now. If I give you the 5, 2, 2, that really means nothing to me mathematically to do any work. I have to make it a fraction. So that's kind of that step. You're moving on to that next one. Kaylee, she didn't start a test. Kaylee didn't start a test. Oh, Haley. Haley, yes. Tell her it's right here in my... Hey, Katie, go back. Basket, right there. Right there, those 2 papers. And the next one too. And those to Miss Farmer. They can work, yeah, they're fine. No calculator. No calculator. Alright, so at this point, if I want to go from mixed to improper, you're going to take your whole number. So I'm going to write it in words so you'll see it. Whole number. And you're going to times it, okay, by your denominator. So I'm going to take this 2 and times it by this 3. Okay? Then you are going to add the numerator. So from here, then I'm going to add the numerator. So 2 times 3 plus 2, that becomes your numerator, and your denominator stays the same because I'm still putting them in groups of 3. So that's why my numerator does not change. I'm sorry, denominator. The denominator doesn't change. Sorry, my bad. So let's look at a couple of those. Let's say I have 1 4/5. You're going to say 1 times 5 plus 4. So you said that was what? 9/5. Okay? Let's do one more. Let's say we have a bigger number. Let's say I have something like 12 1/2. Okay? You're still going to multiply and then add. So it's what? 25/2. Okay? Any question there? Yes, sir. Right now?